The space around Earth's solar system had been quiet for millions of years, but that peace ended when the alien ships appeared like deadly shadows against the stars. The Zephyrian fleet came out of hyperspace with a flash of blue light that could be seen from Mars, and their ships were unlike anything humans had ever built or imagined. Each vessel looked like a giant crystal that had been carved by master artists and then given the power to fly between worlds. Admiral Kethver stood on the bridge of his flagship and looked out at the small blue planet that his people had come to conquer. His purple scales caught the light from the ship's control panels, and his yellow eyes focused on Earth with the cold stare of a predator who had found easy prey. Captain Jake Morrison was drinking coffee in his quarters aboard the EDS Vigilant when the alarm bells started ringing throughout the ship. He had been reading reports from the outer system patrols when his communication device buzzed with an emergency signal that made his blood run cold. The message was simple but terrifying, and it came from the Deep Space Monitoring Station near Pluto. Unknown ships had entered the solar system, and they were heading straight for Earth with clear hostile intent. Jake dropped his coffee cup and ran to the bridge where his crew was already working at their stations with the focused energy of people who knew their lives might depend on what they did in the next few hours. Lieutenant Amy Collins was the first person Jake saw when he reached the bridge, and her face was pale as she looked up from her communication console. She had been trying to contact the alien ships for the past 10 minutes, but all her attempts had been met with silence or strange signals that her computers could not understand. The aliens were not interested in talking, and that fact alone told Jake everything he needed to know about their intentions. Amy handed him the preliminary scan results, and Jake felt his heart sink as he read the numbers. The alien fleet consisted of over 200 ships, and each one was larger than anything in Earth's military forces. The Zephyrian message came through 30 minutes after their arrival, and it was delivered in perfect English that had obviously been learned from monitoring human broadcasts over many years. Admiral Kethver's voice was deep and filled with the kind of confidence that comes from winning every battle you have ever fought. He spoke slowly and clearly, as if he were talking to children who might not understand complex ideas. The message was simple and direct in the way that ultimatums always are when they come from those who hold all the power. Humanity had exactly 24 hours to surrender completely or face total destruction, and there would be no negotiations or discussions about terms. Jake looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew and saw the same mix of fear and determination that he felt in his own chest. Amy was still trying to establish some kind of diplomatic contact, but the aliens had cut off all communication channels after delivering their ultimatum. Lieutenant Bob Chun was running tactical analysis on the alien ships, and his preliminary results were not encouraging. The enemy vessels appeared to have advanced shield technology and weapon systems that were far beyond anything Earth could match in direct combat. Ensign Kate Miller was coordinating with other human ships throughout the system, and her reports confirmed what everyone already suspected. Earth's military forces were completely outmatched by the alien technology. The Zephyrians had studied human civilization for years before making their move, and they knew exactly what kind of resistance they would face. Their long-range sensors had mapped every human military installation and counted every ship in Earth's defense fleet. Admiral Kethver had conquered 17 different star systems, and he had never encountered a species that could stand against Zephyrian military might for more than a few hours. The humans appeared to be even more primitive than most of the races his people had defeated, and their weapons technology was laughably outdated compared to Zephyrian plasma cannons and quantum shields. Dr. Kevin Yang received the alert at his research facility on the far side of the moon, and he immediately began activating protocols that had been in place for over 50 years. His facility was hidden inside a crater that had been modified to look completely natural from space, and even the most advanced alien sensors would see nothing more than ancient rock formations. Kevin had spent his entire career preparing for this moment, and now that it had finally arrived, he felt a strange mix of excitement and terror. The project he had been working on was humanity's greatest secret and its most powerful weapon, but it had never been tested against real enemies in actual combat conditions. The alien fleet began moving toward Earth in a formation that showed their complete confidence in victory. Admiral Kethver did not bother with complex battle plans or careful tactical positioning because he did not expect to face any meaningful resistance. His ships moved through space like a parade of conquerors, who were already celebrating their triumph. The Zephyrian crews prepared their weapon systems and ran final checks on their equipment, but there was no sense of urgency or concern among the alien warriors. They had done this many times before, and they expected this conquest to be easier than most. Captain Jake Morrison watched the approaching enemy fleet on his main screen and tried to think of some way to protect his world from the coming attack. His ship was one of only 12 vessels in Earth's Deep Space Defense Force, and even working together, they would not be able to stop even a single Zephyrian warship. The aliens had technology that was hundreds of years ahead of human science, and their ships were built for conquest rather than exploration. Jake knew that conventional military tactics would be useless against such overwhelming superiority, but he also knew that humanity had secrets the aliens had not discovered. The hours passed slowly as both sides prepared for what everyone believed would be a very short war. The Zephyrians moved closer to Earth with the steady confidence of professionals who had never known defeat, while the humans made desperate preparations for a battle they could not hope to win through traditional means. But hidden in the darkness of space and protected by technology the aliens could not detect, something else was waiting and preparing to show the galaxy that humanity was not as helpless as it appeared to be. The Zephyrian fleet moved through the asteroid belt like a river of death, flowing toward Earth, and Admiral Kethver felt the familiar excitement that came before every easy victory. His ships had crossed half the galaxy to reach this small system, and now they were only hours away from adding another conquered world to the growing Zephyrian Empire. The Admiral's tactical officers were already making plans for the occupation of Earth and discussing how many humans would be needed as slaves to work in the Empire's mining operations. Kethver himself was more interested in the strategic value of Earth's location, which would give his people control over several important space trade routes. Captain Jake Morrison stood on his bridge and watched the alien fleet approach with the steady determination of someone who knew he was about to die but refused to give up without a fight. His communication officer, Amy Collins, had been monitoring alien transmissions for hours, and her analysis confirmed what everyone already suspected. The Zephyrians were not interested in negotiation or compromise, and they viewed humans as nothing more than insects to be stepped on. Jake knew that his next decision would probably be his last as a starship captain, but he also knew that someone had to make one final attempt to avoid unnecessary bloodshed. The transmission that Jake sent to the alien fleet was broadcast on every frequency that human technology could produce, and it was recorded by monitoring stations throughout the solar system. His voice was calm and professional as he delivered what he knew would be humanity's last diplomatic message to the approaching enemy. The words were simple and direct because Jake wanted to make sure the aliens understood exactly what he was saying. He identified himself as a representative of Earth's government and formally requested that the alien fleet turn around and leave human space immediately. Admiral Kethver was reviewing supply reports when his communication officer interrupted him with news of the human transmission. The alien commander listened to Jake's message with the kind of amusement that comes from hearing a mouse threaten a lion. The human captain was warning the Zephyrian fleet to stay away from Earth, and threatening consequences if they continued their approach. Kethver's bridge crew began making the clicking sounds that served as Zephyrian laughter, and the Admiral himself felt genuinely entertained by the boldness of these primitive creatures. Subcommander Veltar activated the main tactical display and showed his superior the complete analysis of human military capabilities that Zephyrian intelligence had compiled over many months of observation. Earth's space-based defenses consisted of fewer than 20 small ships and a handful of orbital weapon platforms that appeared to be armed with primitive nuclear missiles. The humans had barely achieved faster than light travel, and their most powerful weapons were crude projectile systems that would be completely useless against Zephyrian shield technology. Veltar's report concluded that the entire human military could be destroyed in less than 10 minutes of actual combat. The alien admiral looked at the tactical display and shook his head in amazement at human foolishness. These creatures actually believed they could threaten a fleet that had conquered worlds with populations in the billions and military forces that were vastly superior to anything Earth could field. Kethver had seen this kind of desperate bravery before in other primitive species, and it always ended the same way. The weaker races would make bold speeches and issue meaningless threats right up until the moment when Zephyrian plasma cannons turned their ships into expanding clouds of superheated gas. Captain Lisa Park was monitoring the situation from Earth's primary military command center, and she felt a cold knot of fear in her stomach as she watched the alien fleet continue its approach without any sign of slowing down. The Zephyrians had ignored Jake's warning completely, and their ships were now moving into what appeared to be attack formation. Lisa had been hoping against hope that the aliens might be willing to talk, but their silence made it clear that they had come to Earth for one purpose only. The invasion would begin soon, and there was nothing that conventional human military forces could do to stop it. General Ron Hayes stood beside Lisa and watched the tactical displays with the grim expression of a professional soldier who understood exactly how desperate the situation had become. He had spent 40 years in Earth's military, and he had never faced an enemy with such overwhelming technological superiority. The Zephyrian ships were not just more advanced than human vessels, they were so far beyond Earth's capabilities that a conventional battle would be less like a war and more like an execution. Ron knew that humanity's only hope lay in the classified projects that most people did not even know existed. The alien fleet reached the optimal attack position, and Admiral Kethver gave the order for his ships to begin charging their weapon systems. Zephyrian plasma cannons required several minutes to reach full power, but once they were ready, they could turn entire cities into molten craters with a single shot. The Admiral planned to demonstrate his fleet's power by destroying a few human orbital installations before demanding Earth's immediate surrender. He wanted the humans to understand that resistance was not only futile, but also completely pointless. Dr. Kevin Yang received an encrypted message at his lunar facility and immediately began the final preparation sequence for humanity's most secret weapon system. His hands moved quickly over control panels that had been built using technology the aliens could not even imagine, and his screens displayed information that would have seemed like magic to most humans. Kevin had devoted his entire life to this moment, and now that it had finally arrived, he felt the weight of his species' survival resting on his shoulders. The weapon he was preparing had never been used in actual combat, but theoretical calculations suggested it would be devastatingly effective against any known technology. The Zephyrian attack began with the slow ritual of warriors who expected no real opposition, and Admiral Kethver savored every moment of the approaching victory. His plasma cannons were almost fully charged, and his targeting systems had locked onto the largest human orbital platform. In a few more minutes, the first shot would be fired, and the conquest of Earth would officially begin. The Admiral had no way of knowing that human scientists had been preparing for this moment for over 5 decades, and that Earth's real defenses were completely invisible to Zephyrian sensors. Captain Jake Morrison made one final transmission to his homeworld and told his family that he loved them before preparing to engage an enemy that his ship could not possibly defeat. Amy Collins was still monitoring alien communications, and her reports confirmed that the Zephyrians were preparing to open fire within minutes. The bridge crew of the EDS Vigilant worked at their stations with quiet efficiency, and nobody spoke about their chances of survival because everyone already knew the answer. They were about to fight for humanity's future, and they would do their duty even if it cost them everything. Commander Steve Walsh stood in the control room of Luna Base 7 and watched displays that showed information no alien sensors could detect because the facility itself existed in a carefully maintained bubble of folded spacetime. The base had been built 50 years ago using technology that human scientists had discovered by accident during their first experiments with dark matter manipulation. Steve had been the base commander for 10 years, and he had spent every day of that time preparing for the moment when Earth would need the weapons his facility controlled. The aliens approaching Earth had no idea that they were flying directly into the most sophisticated military trap ever conceived by human minds. Dr. Rachel Kim ran her fingers over control panels that regulated forces most humans could not even imagine and checked the status of weapon systems that existed outside normal space. She had been the chief scientist for the Omega Defense Network since its creation, and she understood the technology better than anyone else alive. The network consisted of 500 automated defense platforms that were hidden in folded dimensions and could materialize at any point within the solar system in less than 3 seconds. Each platform contained weapons that could manipulate matter at the quantum level and essentially dissolve enemy ships by breaking the bonds that held their atoms together. The Omega Defense Network had been humanity's greatest secret for half a century, and fewer than 100 people knew of its existence. The project had begun during the early days of human space exploration, when radio telescopes detected signals that proved intelligent life existed elsewhere in the galaxy. Earth's leaders had realized that humanity might someday face threats from advanced alien civilizations, and they had authorized the development of defensive systems that could protect the planet from any possible attack. The technology required had seemed impossible at first, but human scientists had proven once again that determination and creativity could overcome seemingly insurmountable obstacles. Major Don Foster coordinated with defense stations throughout the solar system and confirmed that all Omega platforms were fully charged and ready for immediate deployment. His communication network used quantum entanglement to send messages instantaneously across interstellar distances, and the aliens had no way to detect or intercept his transmissions. Don had been monitoring the approaching Zephyrian fleet for hours, and his analysis confirmed that the enemy ships were using technology that was advanced but still based on conventional physics. The aliens had powerful shields and devastating weapons, but they had never encountered anything like the quantum disruption fields that human scientists had learned to control. The Zephyrian intelligence reports that Admiral Kethfer relied on were completely accurate as far as they went, but they only showed the military assets that humanity wanted aliens to see. Earth's conventional defense fleet really did consist of fewer than 20 ships, and the orbital weapon platforms really were armed with primitive nuclear missiles. What the aliens did not know was that these visible defenses were nothing more than decoys designed to make potential enemies underestimate human military capabilities. The real defensive systems were hidden in dimensions that existed parallel to normal space and could only be accessed using technology that required a complete understanding of quantum mechanics. Commander Walsh received confirmation that the alien fleet had reached attack position and immediately began the activation sequence for the Omega network. His control room was filled with the quiet hum of machinery that operated according to principles most physicists would have said were impossible. The defense platforms began emerging from their dimensional hiding places and positioning themselves around the Zephyrian fleet with precision that would have been impossible using conventional technology. Each platform was roughly the size of a small building, but they were completely invisible to alien sensors because they existed in a quantum state that was neither fully real nor fully imaginary. Dr. Kim monitored the quantum field generators that powered the entire network and made final adjustments to ensure maximum effectiveness against the alien ships. Her calculations showed that the Zephyrian shields would provide no protection against weapons that attacked matter at the subatomic level. The aliens had built their defenses to stop energy beams and physical projectiles, but they had no way to defend against attacks that simply convinced atoms to stop binding together. The quantum disruption fields would pass through Zephyrian shields as if they did not exist, and turn the most powerful warships in the galaxy into clouds of individual particles. The alien fleet moved into final attack formation, and Admiral Kethfer prepared to demonstrate Zephyrian superiority to the galaxy by destroying Earth's pathetic defenses in a matter of minutes. His tactical officers reported that all weapon systems were ready and targeting computers had locked onto the largest human installations. The Admiral looked forward to the moment when his plasma cannons would show these primitive creatures the price of defying the Zephyrian Empire. He had no way of knowing that invisible weapons were already surrounding his entire fleet and waiting for the order to fire. Major Foster received the final authorization code from Earth's highest military command and immediately transmitted the activation signal to all Omega platforms throughout the solar system. The message traveled instantly through quantum communication channels and reached every defense station at exactly the same moment. Human military personnel who had trained for decades to operate the most advanced weapons ever created began the final countdown sequence that would either save their species or reveal that their secret technology was not as effective as they hoped it would be. The Omega platforms materialized around the Zephyrian fleet like deadly flowers blooming in the darkness of space, and their quantum disruption generators began building the energy fields that would decide the fate of both civilizations. The aliens had seconds to detect the sudden appearance of unknown objects around their ships, but their sensors were designed to identify conventional threats and could not properly analyze technology that operated outside normal physics. Admiral Keffer's tactical displays showed confused readings that his computers could not interpret, and warning alarms began sounding throughout his flagship. Commander Walsh watched his control displays and saw 500 green lights that indicated all Omega platforms were in position and ready to fire. The moment he had trained for his entire career had finally arrived, and the fate of humanity depended on technology that existed at the very edge of scientific possibility. Steve placed his hand on the firing control and prepared to discover whether human ingenuity and 50 years of preparation would be enough to save Earth from an enemy that had conquered 17 star systems and never known defeat. Dr. Kim's final calculations confirmed that the quantum disruption fields would be effective against Zephyrian ship construction and that the alien fleet would be completely destroyed within 15 seconds of weapons activation. Her hands trembled slightly as she realized that she was about to witness the first use of humanity's most powerful weapon in actual combat. The technology she had helped create was about to be tested against real enemies, and the results would determine whether Earth remained free or became another conquered world in the growing Zephyrian Empire. Admiral Keffer felt the familiar rush of excitement that came just before victory as his weapons officer reported that all plasma cannon arrays had reached full charge and were ready to fire. The Zephyrian fleet had positioned itself in the perfect formation to destroy Earth's visible defenses, and the Admiral could already imagine the fear on human faces when they realized how completely outmatched they were. His targeting computers had locked onto the largest orbital platform around Earth, and his first shot would vaporize the installation along with its crew of several hundred humans. Keffer wanted to make sure that Earth's leaders understood the futility of resistance before he began the systematic destruction of their entire civilization. Captain Jake Morrison received the authorization signal he had been waiting for and immediately understood that everything was about to change in ways the aliens could not possibly imagine. The message came directly from Earth's highest military command and consisted of only 3 words that carried the weight of 50 years of preparation. Omega Protocol authorized meant that humanity's greatest secret was about to be revealed, and that the approaching enemy was about to discover why underestimating humans was always a fatal mistake. Jake felt a mixture of relief and anticipation, as he realized that his crew would not have to die in a hopeless battle against impossible odds. Dr. Kevin Yang sat in his control chair at the lunar facility and watched displays that showed the positions of 500 hidden weapons platforms that were now surrounding the alien fleet like invisible angels of death. His finger hovered over the activation switch that would unleash technology the Zephyrians could not comprehend, and demonstrate that humanity was far from helpless despite appearances. Kevin had devoted his entire career to this moment, and now that it had finally arrived, he felt the awesome responsibility of holding his species' survival in his hands. The quantum disruption fields his platforms would generate had never been used against living targets, but theoretical calculations suggested they would be devastatingly effective. The Zephyrian bridge crews prepared for what they expected to be A routine demonstration of superior firepower, and Admiral Kethver savored the anticipation of easy victory. His tactical officer subcommander, Veltar, reported that human ships were moving into defensive positions, but their actions seemed pathetically inadequate compared to the overwhelming force that was about to be unleashed against them. The aliens had studied human military doctrine and knew that Earth's forces would try to protect their orbital installations, but such efforts would only delay the inevitable by a few minutes at most. Commander Steve Walsh received confirmation that all Omega platforms had materialized successfully around the enemy fleet and were ready to fire on his command. The quantum field generators were operating at maximum efficiency, and the targeting computers had identified every alien ship within the effective range of the disruption weapons. Steve had trained for this moment for over a decade, but he still felt the weight of making a decision that would either save humanity or reveal that their secret technology was not as powerful as they hoped. The fate of Earth depended on weapons that existed at the very edge of scientific possibility. Admiral Kethver gave the order to begin the attack and watched as his weapons officer prepared to fire the first shot that would officially begin the conquest of Earth. The plasma cannon that targeted the largest human orbital platform contained enough energy to destroy a small moon, and its destructive power would serve as a clear message to any other species that might consider resisting. Zephyrian expansion. The alien commander expected to see the installation disappear in a flash of superheated gas, followed quickly by the surrender of all remaining human forces. Dr. Rachel Kim monitored the quantum field generators from her position in Luna Base 7 and made final adjustments to ensure maximum effectiveness against the alien ship hulls. Her analysis of Zephyrian technology confirmed that their shields and armor were designed to resist conventional weapons but would provide no protection against attacks that operated at the subatomic level. The disruption fields would pass through alien defenses as if they did not exist, and convince the atoms in enemy ships to simply stop holding together in coherent structures. Captain Jake Morrison stood on his bridge and prepared to witness either humanity's greatest triumph or its final defeat as the moment of truth arrived for both civilizations. His crew worked at their stations with quiet efficiency, and nobody spoke because everyone understood that the next few seconds would determine whether Earth remained free or became another conquered world. Jake watched his tactical display and saw the alien weapons charging to full power while invisible human platforms prepared to demonstrate why appearances could be deceiving. The Zephyrian plasma cannons reached firing readiness, and Admiral Kethver prepared to give the final command that would begin the destruction of human civilization. His bridge crew waited with professional calm for the order that would unleash devastating firepower against targets that could not possibly defend themselves. The Admiral looked at his tactical display one last time and confirmed that everything was proceeding exactly according to plan. He opened his mouth to speak the words that would start the attack. Commander Walsh received the final authorization from Earth Command and immediately activated the Omega Defense Network with a single touch of his control panel. 500 quantum disruption platforms opened fire simultaneously, and their weapons created fields of controlled chaos that began breaking down the molecular structure of every Zephyrian ship within range. The alien vessels began coming apart at the atomic level as the bonds that held their matter together simply ceased to exist under the influence of technology that operated outside normal physics. Dr. Kim watched her instruments register the successful activation of all quantum field generators and felt a mixture of triumph and horror as she realized that her theoretical calculations were proving correct in the most dramatic way possible. The Zephyrian ships were dissolving like sugar cubes in water as their atomic structure lost cohesion under the influence of disruption fields that convinced matter to forget how to hold itself together. The most powerful fleet in the galaxy was being destroyed by weapons that did not even produce visible beams or explosive flashes. Admiral Kethver had just enough time to see his tactical displays light up with warnings about unknown energy sources before his flagship began falling apart around him. The bridge deck beneath his feet started becoming soft and formless as the metal lost its molecular integrity, and the walls began flowing like liquid as their atomic bonds dissolved. The alien commander's last thought was one of complete bewilderment, as he tried to understand how primitive humans had hidden such impossible technology from Zephyrian intelligence. The destruction of the Zephyrian fleet happened so quickly that most human observers did not fully understand what they had witnessed until several minutes after it was over. Captain Jake Morrison watched his tactical display in stunned silence, as 200 alien warships simply ceased to exist in the space of 15 seconds. The enemy vessels did not explode or burn or break apart in the dramatic fashion that movies had taught people to expect. Instead, they just dissolved like ice cubes dropped into hot water until nothing remained except scattered particles and the fading energy signatures of weapons that had briefly opened windows into other dimensions. Lieutenant Amy Collins was the first person on Jake's bridge to speak after the impossible event, and her voice was barely above a whisper as she confirmed what everyone could see but nobody could quite believe. The alien fleet that had threatened to destroy human civilization was completely gone, and there were no surviving ships or escape pods or any other evidence that 200 warships had ever existed in that region of space. Amy ran scan after scan with her sensors, but found only empty vacuum where moments before the most powerful military force in the galaxy had been preparing to attack Earth. Commander Steve Walsh sat in his control chair at Luna Base 7 and watched displays that confirmed the complete success of the Omega Defense Network. All 500 platforms had fired simultaneously and achieved perfect results against targets that had been considered invincible by every intelligence report in Zephyrian files. The quantum disruption fields had worked exactly as theoretical calculations predicted, and the alien ships had been destroyed so thoroughly that not even debris remained to mark their passing. Steve felt a mixture of relief and amazement as he realized that humanity had just won the most one-sided victory in military history. Dr. Rachel Kim monitored the quantum field generators as they powered down from their brief but devastating activation and confirmed that all systems had operated within normal parameters. The weapons that had taken 50 years to develop and build had proven their effectiveness in the most dramatic way possible, and Earth now possessed a defensive capability that could protect the planet from any conceivable threat. Rachel felt proud of her work, but also sobered by the awesome, destructive power that human science had learned to control. Admiral Kethver and his entire fleet had been reduced to individual atoms that were now scattered across millions of cubic kilometers of space, and the Zephyrian Empire had lost its most powerful military force without even understanding what had killed it. The alien warriors who had conquered 17 star systems and never known defeat had been destroyed by weapons they could not see, using technology they could not comprehend. Their final moments had been filled with confusion and disbelief as their ships dissolved around them, and their instruments failed to explain what was happening. Dr. Kevin Yang transmitted a status report to Earth's command center and informed the planet's leaders that the alien threat had been eliminated completely, with no human casualties or damage to any Earth installations. The Omega Defense Network had performed flawlessly during its first combat test, and all platforms were returning to their hidden positions in folded space where they would wait for the next threat to humanity. Kevin felt exhausted but satisfied, as he realized that his life's work had just saved his entire species from conquest and slavery. General Ron Hayes received Young's report in Earth's primary military command center and immediately began the process of informing world leaders that the crisis was over and the planet was safe. The news spread quickly through government channels and then to the general population as people learned that humanity had been on the brink of invasion but had somehow achieved total victory in a matter of seconds. Ron knew that the true details of the battle would remain classified for many years, but he also knew that the galaxy would never underestimate human capabilities again. Captain Lisa Park coordinated with defense stations throughout the solar system and confirmed that all alien signals had ceased and no enemy ships remained operational anywhere within human space. The Zephyrian fleet that had arrived with such confidence and arrogance was now nothing more than a cloud of particles that would eventually be absorbed by the solar wind. Lisa felt amazed by the sudden reversal of fortune that had transformed certain defeat into complete victory, and she wondered how the rest of the galaxy would react when news of the battle reached other civilizations. The aftermath of the battle was monitored by automated listening posts throughout human space, and the information they gathered painted a picture of shock and confusion among alien civilizations that had considered the Zephyrians to be invincible. Emergency communications between different species carried reports of the fleet's instantaneous destruction and speculation about what kind of weapons could have achieved such devastating results. The consensus among alien military experts was that humanity possessed technology that was far more advanced than anyone had suspected. Captain Jake Morrison addressed his crew over the ship's communication system and thanked them for their professionalism during what had appeared to be humanity's darkest hour. His words were recorded and transmitted to Earth, where they became part of the historical record of the day when humans proved they could defend themselves against any threat. Jake's voice carried a mixture of pride and relief as he told his people that they had witnessed the birth of a new era in which Earth would no longer be considered a weak target by aggressive alien empires. News of the victory reached the farthest human colonies within hours, and celebrations began on worlds throughout human space as people realized that their species had just demonstrated military capabilities that could protect them from any enemy. The quantum disruption technology that had destroyed the Zephyrian fleet became humanity's ultimate deterrent and ensured that future conflicts would be resolved through negotiation rather than conquest. Earth had proven that peaceful species could defend themselves when threatened, and that underestimating human ingenuity was always a mistake. The galaxy's political landscape changed overnight as alien civilizations began reaching out to Earth with offers of trade agreements and mutual defense pacts. Species that had previously ignored humanity now sought diplomatic relations with the people who had developed weapons that could destroy entire fleets in seconds. The age of human vulnerability was over, and a new era of respect and cooperation had begun. Within days of the battle, automated monitoring stations detected signals from dozens of alien civilizations, carrying the same basic message to their military forces. The humans of Earth possessed defensive technology that was beyond current understanding, and any species that threatened them would face the same fate as the Zephyrian fleet. The galaxy had learned that humanity's warnings should never be dismissed, and that appearances could be very deceiving when dealing with a species that had turned scientific curiosity into the ultimate weapon.